Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to be tackling intelligence.
Ooh, intelligence.
Yeah, but specifically how animal intelligence compares to our own and what led to that uniquely human leap in cognitive abilities.
A fascinating question.
Yeah.
It's something that has captivated thinkers for centuries.
Yeah, and you've been diving deep into a book that tackles these very questions. The Human Evolutionary Transition from Animal Intelligence?
By Enquist, Ghirlanda, and Lind.
That's right. I'm eager to hear what insights they offer.
It's a really compelling read.
Yeah.
It approaches the question from multiple angles, weaving together evolutionary biology, animal behavior, and cognitive science to kind of paint this picture of how intelligence has evolved over time.
One of the first things that caught my attention was this idea of combinatorial dilemmas. It sounds a bit technical.
Yeah.
Can you break that down for us a little bit?
Absolutely. So imagine you're an animal and you're trying to solve a problem, like say a chimpanzee cracking open a nut.
Okay.
Seems simple enough, right? Yeah. But there are actually many steps involved. Finding the right kind of nut, selecting the right tools,
Yeah.
positioning them correctly, applying the right amount of force.
Right.
Each step has multiple options,
Uh-huh.
and stringing those options together into a successful sequence gets really complex very quickly.
So it's not just about learning the individual actions,
Yeah,
it's about figuring out the right order,
Exactly.
the right combination.
Exactly. The authors point out that even with a limited repertoire of actions, the number of possible combinations explodes exponentially.
Yeah.
And this creates this huge challenge for animals that are relying on simple trial and error learning.
So how do animals learn complex behaviors if random trial and error is so inefficient?
Well, one way is through what's called chaining.
Chaining.
Chaining. This
Yeah.
is a really powerful learning mechanism that helps animals overcome this combinatorial explosion.
Okay.
Essentially, it's about linking actions together like a chain. Each step is triggered by the previous one and hopefully leads to a reward.
Okay.
Think about teaching a dog to fetch.
I could break it down into smaller steps. You reward each step and then gradually build up the complete sequence.
So you're building a complex behavior one link at a time.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, is chaining really that powerful?
It is.
Could it explain all animal learning?
Well, in theory, yes. Chaining can lead to the learning of any sequence given enough time and information.
Mm.
And what's interesting is that this process can be described with just a few equations.
Oh, wow.
It's a very elegant and efficient system.
That's fascinating how such a seemingly simple process can give rise to these incredibly complex behaviors.
It is.
And the book dives into a bunch of real-world examples, right?
Yes, they illustrate chaining with examples from foraging behavior, predator-prey interactions, and even animal training.
Oh, cool.
So, for instance, they describe how black rats learn to strip pine cones for seeds.
Okay.
It's a multi-step process, and they master it through this series of chained associations, each action leading to the next. That's a great example. But I'm still curious about the limits of animal learning. If chaining is so versatile, why can't I teach my dog calculus?
Well, that's a great question, and it highlights a crucial point. While chaining is powerful, animal memory has its limits.
Okay.
Animals are incredible at learning associations between stimuli and actions,
All right.
but their ability to remember and manipulate sequences of events is restricted. And this is one of the bottlenecks for more complex cognitive abilities.
So it's not just about learning the steps, it's about the capacity to hold and process those steps in a sophisticated way.
Exactly. For example, pigeons can quickly learn to discriminate between single colors.
Right.
But when researchers try to teach them a specific sequence of colors, they struggle.
Interesting.
Their ability to represent and work with sequential information seems fundamentally different from our own.
So chaining explains how animals learn to navigate their world, but it also kind of hints at some of the constraints that prevent them from reaching those higher levels of complexity we see in humans.
Precisely. It's a key piece of the puzzle.
What about social learning? We often hear the phrase monkey see, monkey do.
Right.
But is it really that simple?
It's definitely more nuanced than just copying. Animals face significant challenges when it comes to social learning.
Okay.
So first, they have to solve what researchers call the correspondence problem,
Correspondence problem.
figuring out how another animal's actions relate to their own body.
So if I see you using a tool, I need to translate that visual information into a set of movements that work for my body.
Exactly. And on top of that, they have to determine if what's rewarding for the demonstrator is also rewarding for them.
Ah, okay.
Just because you enjoy eating a particular food doesn't mean I will find it appealing.
So it sounds like social learning, while potentially beneficial, also requires a good deal of processing and adaptation.
Absolutely. It's not just about blind imitation. It involves integrating new information with existing knowledge and making judgments about its relevance to their own needs.
Okay, so we've established that animals learn in these really complex ways. But the book also tackles a question that has sparked endless debate. Can animals think?
Yeah.
How do the authors define thinking in this context?
They define it as the ability to mentally recombine information from different experiences to discover new and useful sequences of actions.
Oh, okay.
They're not suggesting that animals have complex language or abstract reasoning,
Right.
but rather this fundamental capacity to manipulate information internally.
Okay.
And to explore this, they examine evidence from various areas of research, reevaluation experiments, latent learning, spatial navigation, and even those intriguing examples of seemingly insightful behavior.
Let's unpack those one by one. What exactly are revaluation experiments?
So imagine an animal is trained to press a lever for a food reward.
Okay.
Then researchers do something to make that food less appealing,
Uh-huh.
like pairing it with a mild illness.
Oh, okay.
Now, if the animal can think, they should reduce lever pressing,
Okay.
even without directly experiencing that negative consequence again. They're essentially combining their knowledge of the lever of the food and this new negative association to predict an unfavorable outcome.
That's a fascinating way to test their ability to update their understanding based on new information.
It is.
What do these experiments reveal about animal thinking?
Well, that's where the debate lies.
Okay.
Some studies show this immediate revaluation, suggesting some level of mental recombination.
Okay.
But others show a delayed response where the change in behavior happens gradually,
Mm-hmm.
or even no revaluation at all.
Mm-hmm.
They're a complex issue.
Yeah, it seems like studying animal minds is a bit like detective work.
It is.
Piecing together clues from different experiments and trying to come up with the most plausible explanations.
Exactly. And that's what makes this research so intriguing.
What about latent learning? I remember learning about those classic experiments with rats exploring mazes.
Yeah, so latent learning is all about learning that occurs in the absence of any obvious reward.
Hmm.
So in those rat maze experiments, rats allowed to freely explore the maze without food. They often find the food much faster later on, compared to rats that hadn't explored beforehand.
So it's like they were building a mental map of the maze, even though they weren't directly rewarded for it.
It is tempting to think so.
Does that suggest they are capable of thinking?
Well, the authors argue that even latent learning can be explained through associative learning.
Oh, okay.
They suggest the rats are still forming associations,
Oh.
just not with the food itself.
Okay.
Maybe they're associating certain turns with avoiding obstacles or reaching a familiar area.
So they are still learning connections,
Right.
but the connections might be more subtle than we initially realized.
Exactly. It highlights the importance of carefully considering alternative explanations before jumping to conclusions about higher-level cognitive processes.
What about spatial navigation? Animals are incredible at finding their way, sometimes over vast distances.
They are.
Surely that requires some level of planning and thinking ahead, right?
Spatial navigation is another area where we see remarkable abilities in the animal kingdom. The book discusses studies with chimpanzees that suggest they might take shortcuts or plan efficient routes.
Okay.
However, there's debate about whether this truly reflects planning in the way we think about it, or if they are relying on a sophisticated system of landmarks and learned associations.
So again, it's about considering all the possible explanations for these complex behaviors.
Right.
What about insight? We've all seen those videos of animals seemingly having these aha moments.
Yeah.
Doesn't that suggest a more complex mental process at work?
So insight is a particularly intriguing phenomenon, but the authors caution against assuming that rapid learning automatically equals insight.
Okay.
They point out that even sudden changes in behavior can arise from chaining, as long as all the necessary associations are in place.
Okay.
They highlight research by Shuttleworth, who argues that seemingly insightful behavior can often be attributed to prior experience,
Right.
even if it wasn't immediately obvious.
So it seems like animals might be drawing on this hidden well of knowledge, rather than having this sudden flash of genius.
Precisely. It underscores the need to carefully consider alternative explanations
Yeah.
and the role of prior learning before attributing complex behavior to insight.
So we've looked at revaluation experiments,
Yeah.
latent learning,
Yeah.
spatial navigation, and insight.
Yep.
And in each case, there are these alternative explanations that don't require animals to have these complex thinking abilities.
Right.
What's the overall picture the authors paint about animal intelligence?
They propose what they call the standard model of animal intelligence.
Standard model of animal intelligence.
Based on the idea that animal intelligence is primarily driven by associative learning.
Okay.
Shaped and guided by genetic predispositions. It's a remarkably powerful system.
Yeah.
But one that prioritizes efficiency in their specific ecological niche over flexibility to adapt to new challenges.
That makes sense. Animals are masters of their environments.
They are.
But they don't need to be writing poetry or designing spaceships.
Right.
Their mental abilities are honed for what they need to survive and thrive in their particular niche.
Exactly. And this trade-off, efficiency over flexibility, is a key takeaway from the book.
Yeah.
It helps explain why animals excel at what they do, but also why they haven't made that same leap toward the abstract thinking that characterizes human intelligence.
This has been a fantastic overview of animal intelligence.
Yeah.
And now I'm eager to delve into what makes human intelligence unique.
Yeah.
What allowed us to break free from these constraints of the standard model and develop these remarkable mental abilities.
That's what we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive. Get ready for a journey into the world of human cognition and the incredible power of culture.
All right, I'm ready. Let's do it.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We spent the first part of this deep dive exploring the fascinating world of animal intelligence,
We did.
the power of associative learning and all that.
Yeah, fascinating stuff.
And let's turn our attention to what makes human intelligence so unique. What sets us apart from our animal cousins? Well, the authors argue that one of the key ingredients in human intelligence is culture.
Okay.
And it's not just about learning from others. It's about this incredible accumulation of knowledge, skills, and innovations that are passed down through generations.
So culture acts like this giant external memory bank
Exactly.
we can all tap into.
It allows us to build on the achievements of those who came before us. We don't have to reinvent the wheel in each generation.
Yeah.
And this frees up our mental resources to tackle new challenges
Right.
and push the boundaries of knowledge even further.
Yeah. I'm thinking about language, for example.
Yeah.
No one is born speaking English or Mandarin.
Right.
We learn these incredibly complex systems of communication from our families and communities.
Yeah.
And languages themselves evolve over time,
They do.
becoming richer and more nuanced.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Language is a perfect example of how culture shapes our minds. It's also a hallmark of human intelligence. And what's interesting is that language itself might have played a role in shaping our cognitive abilities.
Okay.
The authors suggest that humans have evolved this unique capacity to represent and manipulate sequential information,
Okay.
which is essential for language.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Language is all about sequences. Sequences of sounds, words, and grammatical structures.
Right.
If our brains have become specialized for processing these complex sequences, it could explain why we're so good at other skills that involve sequential information, like music and mathematics.
They actually include a table in the book
Oh, wow.
that lists several skills unique to humans and how they relate to sequential processing.
Okay.
They mention music dance tool making and mathematics, even social customs like rituals and legal procedures. All of these involve representing and manipulating sequences of actions or symbols.
So it's like our brains are wired for sequences, and culture provides us with this incredible library of sequential information to work with.
It does.
But is that the whole story?
That's a great question.
If it were just about sequences, couldn't we train a chimpanzee to be a concert pianist or a mathematician?
Well, that's where the idea of mental flexibility comes in. Humans aren't just good at following procedures or mimicking what we see.
Right.
We can adapt our knowledge to new situations, reason about abstract concepts, and imagine possibilities that have no direct connection to the physical world. This mental agility allows us to think outside the box, so to speak.
Yeah.
And that's something we haven't observed in other animals to the same extent.
It's like the difference between following a recipe and inventing a new dish.
Exactly.
A recipe is a set of instructions,
Right.
a sequence to follow. But creating something truly novel requires you to break free from those constraints, experiment, and imagine new possibilities.
That's a fantastic analogy.
And this mental flexibility is what allows us to do things like write fiction, develop scientific theories, and create social institutions. These are all mental worlds that exist outside the realm of our immediate physical environment,
Right.
yet they have a profound impact on our lives.
They do.
I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together.
Yeah.
We have this innate capacity for sequential processing. Culture provides us with this vast pool of information and skills to draw from. And our mental flexibility allows us to go beyond simply replicating what we've learned and create something truly new.
Exactly.
But how did this ability to think actually evolve?
Right.
What was the driving force?
That's a question that has puzzled scientists for a long time.
Yeah.
The book suggests that the ability to think, to recombine information and generate new sequences of actions, that played a pivotal role in the human evolutionary transition.
Okay.
However, they also emphasize that thinking itself has costs.
Costs? How can thinking be costly? It seems like such a huge advantage.
Well, consider this: building mental models and using them to plan takes time and effort.
Okay.
Imagine trying to plan a trip to a new city. You gather information, consider different routes, compare costs, weigh various factors.
Yeah.
It's mentally demanding.
It is.
And in a fast-paced environment where split-second decisions are crucial for survival, that kind of deliberation can be a liability.
So there's a trade-off.
Yeah.
Thinking allows you to plan and adapt.
Right.
But it can also slow you down.
It can.
In situations that demand quick reaction.
Exactly. The authors introduce this fascinating concept of a mental library.
Mental library.
To help explain how we manage this trade-off.
Okay.
It's essentially a storehouse of pre-computed solutions, procedures, and patterns that help us make decisions faster. Think about a chess computer, using a database of moves to quickly evaluate its options.
It doesn't have to calculate every possible move from scratch.
Right.
It draws on this vast library of pre-analyzed scenarios.
Precisely. And a large portion of our mental library is acquired through learning from others.
Okay.
We inherit these solutions from our culture. We don't have to rediscover fire or invent the wheel in each generation.
So it's like we're born with a basic operating system, but then we download all these software programs from our culture: language, math, social norms, problem-solving strategies.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And this interplay between genes, individual learning, and culture is what makes human intelligence so unique and so powerful.
This is all starting to make sense. But it raises another big question for me. If thinking is so beneficial, why haven't other animals evolved it to the same extent? Why are humans the only species that seem to have crossed this cognitive threshold?
That's a question the book explores in depth.
Yeah.
And it's where we'll pick up in the final part of our deep dive. We'll delve into the specific factors that might have prevented a similar transition in other species.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been exploring this intricate world of animal and human intelligence, uncovering these remarkable abilities of our animal cousins, and those unique features that seem to have set humans on this different evolutionary trajectory.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. And in this final part, we'll tackle this intriguing question of why this transition to advanced thinking seems to have happened only in humans.
Right. What factors prevented other species from making that same leap?
Yeah. It's a question that really makes you ponder the complex interplay of evolution and cognition.
It does. The authors of the Human Evolutionary Transition suggest that it wasn't a single magic bullet, but rather this convergence of factors that created the ideal conditions for this shift in humans.
Okay. So let's dive into those factors. What sets us apart?
One key difference they highlight is our life history. Humans have an exceptionally long childhood and adolescence compared to other primates.
That's true. We take a long time to reach adulthood. How does that relate to intelligence?
It provides us with this extended period for learning complex skills.
Okay.
The book actually compares food production in chimpanzees and humans across their lifespans.
Okay.
Chimpanzees become net producers of calories, meaning they gather more food than they consume by around age 7. But for humans, that doesn't happen until our early 20s.
Wow, that's a huge difference. So for almost 2 decades, we're relying on others to provide for us.
Exactly.
That's a significant investment.
It is.
From our families and communities.
And that investment wouldn't make sense evolutionarily unless it yielded substantial benefits.
Right.
So this extended childhood gives us the time to develop language, learn intricate social customs, and master those sophisticated skills that contribute to our culture.
It's like we're trading immediate productivity for long-term potential.
That's a great way to put it.
We're investing in those mental libraries and honing those thinking skills that allow us to become incredibly efficient and innovative adults.
Another crucial factor is our social structure.
Okay.
Human societies are incredibly cooperative and interconnected,
Yeah.
creating this perfect environment for widespread sharing of knowledge and skills.
That's something that really stood out to me throughout the book.
Yeah,
This emphasis on how deeply intertwined human intelligence is.
it is.
With our social nature,
Mm.
we're constantly learning from each other,
Right.
building upon each other's ideas, collaborating in ways that no other species seems to match.
Precisely. The authors argue that this level of interconnectedness may have allowed humans to cross what they call a cultural threshold.
Cultural threshold.
Below a certain level of complexity, culture may not be robust enough to support the development of advanced thinking.
Okay.
But once that threshold is crossed, things can accelerate rapidly.
So it's like a feedback loop.
Yeah,
As our culture becomes more complex, it creates the conditions for even more sophisticated mental abilities to emerge.
right.
This leads to further cultural development and so on. It's this remarkable snowball effect.
Exactly. And this might help explain why we haven't seen this transition in other species.
Okay.
Their cultures, while impressive in their own right, might not have reached that critical mass needed to propel them beyond the standard model of animal intelligence.
This makes me think about language again. Could language itself have been a driving force in this evolutionary shift?
The authors propose that language didn't just emerge after we developed advanced thinking abilities. It might have co-evolved with them,
Okay.
each influencing the other, in this remarkable dance of shaping and reshaping.
So as language became more complex, it demanded greater cognitive flexibility and processing power.
Right.
This, in turn, allowed for even more intricate language structures, pushing our cognitive abilities further. It's a fascinating idea.
It really highlights this dynamic interplay
Yeah.
between our genes, our experiences, and our cultural inheritance.
Right.
These forces work together to shape who we are and what we're capable of.
This deep dive has been an incredible journey.
It has.
It's given me a new appreciation for the complexities of both animal and human intelligence.
It's truly humbling to realize how much we owe to our evolutionary history and the countless generations who came before us.
It is.
Their achievements and innovations form the foundation upon which we build our own understanding of the world.
And it makes you wonder, what will future generations add to this amazing tapestry
It does.
of human knowledge and ingenuity? What new discoveries and challenges await a species with such a remarkable capacity for thought?
Those are questions worth pondering.
They are.
As we continue to explore the world around us and the universe within, one thing is certain: the journey of understanding intelligence, both our own and that of other species, is far from over.
That's a perfect note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of animal and human intelligence. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.